G'day, it's John O'Brake here with Monday Myth Check, and today's Myth Check is entrepreneurs are just crazy risk takers. You know, I had this really interesting revelation years ago. I was sitting in an entrepreneurial kind of conference back in Australia, in Canberra, in the city where I spent a lot of my early business days. And there were 4 entrepreneurs on the stage, and I watched them each present. I watched them all each bring their business ideas and all those sorts of things. And I looked at them and I thought, man, they're all really different. They weren't just crazy risk takers. Some of them were very pragmatic. Some of them were very plain Jane kind of people. One of them was a good friend of mine, and he'd come over to my place for barbecues and that, and he built a $480 million business in the defense space. But the idea was that these entrepreneurs came in all kinds of shapes and sizes. And then I met a good friend of mine, Mike Baer. And Mike, I remember he said, when you think about the word entrepreneur, which is a French word, it actually means to undertake. So entrepreneurs are undertakers in the good sense. They undertake to do tasks. They undertake things. And so I always used to say entrepreneurs aren't just crazy risk takers, they're managed risk takers. So they seek to undertake something. Yes, it may be something new and fresh and idealistic, but they seek to undertake it. They seek to work through it and think about it. That's actually the first truth that I think really challenges this myth that entrepreneurs are just risk takers, wild risk takers, because they manage risk. They look at risk, and sometimes they look at risk differently to you and I or to other people, and they say, look, there's the risk. Here's how I can manage it. Let's do it. Okay, so they will maybe take more risks than some are willing to do. There are whole profiles of people that are just not risk takers at all for different reasons. Some personality, some belief, some experience, some hurts and fears, all those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, they manage risk. They don't actually chase it. Risk comes their way, and then they figure out, how do I organize this? How do I manage it? And how do I keep going? They really zero in on the data over the drama, okay? So think about drama in a business, not just people drama. It could be the highs and lows of an economy. It could be the challenges that you face in terms of seasonal fluctuations. It could be just the challenge you face as you're building an innovation or building a business, and you have to go through that space where you've had your early adopters, you've had your people get on board, and now you're trying to break into more of a mainstream market, and there's a gap. In fact, Jeffrey Moore wrote a great book called Crossing the Chasm back in the late 90s, early 2000s that dealt with this exact issue. The idea of the chasm being that gap between the early adopters who get you excited at first, and then how do you survive long enough to be able to become a mainstream product? And so it's the data over the drama, okay? Things are going to happen, stuff's going to fluctuate. So that means you've got to be watching your market. That means you've got to be watching the people around you. You've got to be watching all the data, know the numbers, know the finances of the business, know the things you've got to do. If you're going to make a certain grade in terms of a number of sales, what's the process? What are the exact numbers you need to take to get to that number? And you've got to work things backwards. The other piece then is that good entrepreneurs, they'll often build buffers into their business, okay? Now, this is just good financial management. If you manage your personal finances and you don't have a buffer, and the reality is the majority of Americans, and I think Australians are the same, live paycheck to paycheck. So if you are down on income for a month, then the next month could be a disaster and could actually knock you right off your financial perch. So I want you to think about this. Let's look at the reframe of an entrepreneur. You've got a risk to take. What do you need to take that risk to the best of your ability? What structures do you need behind you? What data do you need to understand? And what buffers do you need to put in place to make this successful? That might be personal finances, it might be an investor, it might be a community you bring around you, whatever it is. What are the things you need? So think about that. How do you manage your risk? How do you manage the data and understand the data that you're dealing with? And then how do you build the buffers in to allow for those inevitable ups and downs that come with every business? I want you to think about that. That is true entrepreneurialism. Seeing a risk, figuring out how to manage it, and then taking the risk. Today's Monday Myth Check has been entrepreneurs are just crazy risk takers. I don't believe that they are. Some of them are. Some of them really fail badly because of it. I want you to have a think about that today. I've given you 3 ideas and an action. I'm John O'Brake, as always. Enjoy the journey. Well, g'day, it's John O'Brake here today, and I want to quickly talk to you about self-awareness in leadership and a DISC program that I'm launching. So one of the areas that I'm
really well trained in, worked in for 15 to 20 years, is this assessment tool called DISC. And it basically helps you understand how people behave, how they interact with each other, how they connect, how they disconnect as well, how they can handle conflict, how they coach, how they guide, all these different things. But at the end of the day, it comes from this really important premise that the most important thing in a great leader is an understanding of their own space, their own disposition, their self-awareness. So this DISC workshop is designed to be a simple multi-video process where you can unpack DISC and you can look at it in terms of your own space. You'll do an assessment, so you'll know what your assessment is, and then you go through the videos and you can then book a 15 to 20 minute session with me at the end if you want to. But then also think about, okay, how does this apply to my team? And should we be doing this into your team? But this is where we're at today. I want you to think about coming and doing this DISC workshop with me. It's all online, so you can do it at your own pace, and then we can chat at the end. Hope you're enjoying the journey. I'm looking forward to seeing you on my DISC workshop.